We are in the midst of a deluge of what we call artificial intelligence.
Ethics be damned. I mean, in the long run, I don't think the ethical standards are really going to hold up. It's just an ongoing competition that's never going to stop. You have parents wanting to have their kids have better genes than their neighbors. As if the technology that we have is the facilitator here for a new form of human reality. The ET presence and then the development of the singularity or strong AI on the other. Is it a coincidence that we're looking at these two huge developments all at once? How do you stop the runaway train?
Right now on Higher Journeys with Alexis Brooks.
Richard Dolan, I'm glad to have you back, sir. I know you are an extraordinarily busy man, so thank you for taking the time for coming back on the show. It's been 5 years since we had you on. Can you
No.
believe it? 5
Yeah,
years.
come on. That long?
We've seen each other obviously on the circuit, but this is a long time since we've had you on. So,
It's good to be back, Alexa. It's very nice to be back.
I'm glad that you're here. And I think that it's not a moment too soon as we are in the midst of a deluge of what we call artificial intelligence. Now, look, guys, this has been around a long time, but it's moving at a fever pitch. And our commingling with it, Richard, I think is moving at an even greater fever pitch to the point of both fascination and disturbance. And I'm kind of quoting you. You had a wonderful discourse that you shared with your audience about, I think, 5 months, maybe not even 5 months ago, where you had a discussion with GPT-4 about the alien intelligence, about the alien agenda, about alien intelligence, generally speaking. And you had a lot to say about that. I want to get into that. But you know what? Back in 2017, you and I had a conversation about AI and where this might be going, the singularity included. And you called this a runaway train. And I believe you used that that statement since that time. Before we get into the conversation, I want to play a clip from that little conversation of ours, and then we can comment on the back end.
The AI infrastructure that we're developing is a train out of control. No one has control over this, in my opinion. Like, in other words, you've got people in the computing field and the AI field who want to stop the train. Back 20 years ago, it was a fellow named Bill Joy out of Sun Microsystems who said, stop this train. Today, it's people like Elon Musk, who is very, very concerned about, and I think Stephen Hawking might also fit in this, who are looking at the dangers of runaway artificial intelligence and saying we may have a real problem here. But the thing is, I don't think anyone sees a way to stop this. All right, it's not simply a bunch of scientists agreeing for the greater good of mankind. We need not to do this. That's never going to happen because there's military applications, there's economic, financial applications, there's profit involved in all of this, and it will never stop. So this is happening.
This is happening, is it not? That was 6 years ago, and here we are, Richard. Where are we?
Yeah, we're on that train, Alexa. We are on it, pedal to the metal, full speed ahead. It's like someone's captaining the Titanic, and they see that iceberg, and they're saying full speed ahead. That's kind of where we're at. Since it was interesting to see that conversation with us, and boy, I could really go on, couldn't I? But since then, you know, we're in what I've often been calling a global revolution, globalist revolution, but it's even more than that. It's a transition to a new form of human existence, and potentially, basically, a new version of our species, I guess we could say. We talk about transhumanism. All of this is rolled into one thing, and I mean, you know, we're living in it, so we can see the kind of transformation as it happens. But when you take a few steps back historically and you just look at this from a perspective of longer period, you can see how rapidly this transition is taking place. It's almost in the cosmic snap of a finger. And we're going from, you know, with our grandparents, our great grandparents, not that long ago, 3-4 generations ago, we're living in a totally different world, one that was much more in line with how people had lived for thousands of years before that. And we're moving into something different. So it's going to cause a new form of human social organization, a form of extreme digital control and surveillance. We see that happening every single day. And it's going to transform the human species in ways that we're still not yet figuring out. So all of this, and AI, strong AI, is an integral part of it. It's sort of driving it, the ability to manipulate our genes, the ability to control people's lives digitally in every way. Like, all of those are being facilitated by strong AI. And where it's going, well, it's what I've been calling the fourth stage of humanity.
That's right.
And we're moving into it now. We're into it.
You use the term, this has brought about a sense of both fascination and dread. And I think that could not have been articulated better for me as an example. Richard, I have recently come to get to know a little bit about Chat GPT, both 3.5 and 4.0.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I have to tell you, when I first, and I did it with my fingers crossed behind my back, like, I really don't want to do this, but I got to see what's going on. But man, when I first saw GPT, I had to get up from my chair and go outside and take a breath.
It's like talking to a person. That's how it felt, right?
It's dazzling. And that's what's frightening to me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about just this sort of exponential rise in interest in people interfacing, people like myself. I'm a content creator. We both are, and researchers. So how can you turn your back fully on something like this? But for those of us that have a sense of the perhaps long game, this is where the ethics of it all comes in. I want you to speak to that, if you would.
Yes, I would. It's very important. Yeah, I'm a content creator. You are, and so we are in it's a tough position because you're out there, and people. The reason that people listen to any content creator is because they appreciate what that person has to say. I assume, and it's very easy for people to fall into a trap of using the AI to create their content. So that's problem number one.
Absolutely.
It's critical. And I've already seen on countless YouTube channels, you can see you have these new content creators on all kinds of subjects. And they're obviously just using some version of GPT to create that stuff. And they're not even speaking it. They've got their artificial voice being cloned and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So we're already in that. And for me, and I'm sure for you, that's something that I never, ever want to fall into. I want my content to reflect me. Having said that, the AI is a tool. It's there. I think, it's probably foolish to avoid using a useful tool if you can actually use it for your purposes. And that's really what it comes down to. And not as an excuse, not as a crutch. How good will all of us moving forward be at that? I don't know. It's kind of like talking about the ethics. We have this idea. You hear this with Elon Musk. Well, we need to have kind of ethical standards embedded in our AI. I just saw it in a headline yesterday. Joe Biden is talking about enforcing AI to be non-racist. However, they're going to do that. Yeah. So, you see these attempts, but the real question is, well, there's a lot of questions, but one is, in the long run, let's say 10, 20, 30, 50 years, 100 years, all of these attempts at managing ethics, what I said 6 years ago in that interview with you, there was one thing that was right on, which is you've got competing interests around the world, militaries, corporations, nations, that all want to get their edge over their competitors. You have parents wanting to have their kids have better genes than their neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just an ongoing competition that's never going to stop. And that will continue to drive the need for more power in these tools. Ethics be damned. I mean, in the long run, I don't think the ethical standards are really going to hold up. I think what you're going to see is kind of a AI version of an arms race that will continue. We're already in it. We're going to continue with that. And that's going to, in turn, drive social changes. For example, once you give governments, corporations for that matter, but governments, the ability to have these tools at their disposal. So strong AI, strong 24/7 surveillance over people, both physically in outdoor arenas and then within their home through computers and their web behaviors. Once you give governments the ability to track people in such a manner, they're going to take it. They're going to do it. And if not every government does it, enough governments will do it. And then other governments that aren't doing it will feel the need to do it. So it's as if the technology that we have is the facilitator here for a new form of human reality. And how to legislate this? I mean, I wondered about this for years.
Mm-hmm.
How do you stop the runaway train? How do you create a sense of an ethical legislation to keep people safe? Well, I mean, I'm not saying it's impossible. I feel like the little Dutch boy putting his finger in the dike. You got, okay, I'm going to stop this leak right here. Now you got that one way down over there. Someone else put their finger in that.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just
Right.
going
Good analogy.
how long is this going to continue before the dam breaks, before the dike breaks? I don't know. I haven't yet seen a solution to this one. And I think about it on many days, how to preserve the fundamentals of, what we grew up with, this idea of human freedom. You see it slipping away.
You can see it absolutely, and without getting too controversial, but we can't not a little bit looking at the steady diet, the steady indoctrination of these children into a myriad of things in terms of choices that, without going into detail,
Yeah.
that they may have. All of this is sort of intertwined with this, as you say, strong AI, which, by the way, I would like you to delineate for me and maybe some in the audience that may not know what that is, as opposed to what, weak
What we
AI?
have now.
What is
Yeah.
strong AI?
Yeah, great question. Well, I'm not an AI scientist, so let me just make that clear. But it is an interest of mine. It's been one for a while. So I guess on that basis, there are different terms in AI. So there's generative artificial intelligence, which is a kind of ability for which we're not yet there. And that's maybe somewhat analogous to what we call strong AI. So it's the ability of AI to think. Now, is it already doing that? You ask your GPT, are you thinking? And it'll say, no, I'm just a language model.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's probably true. It seems like it's thinking sometimes, doesn't it? But so I guess when to me, it means when AI gets to the point where it has a volition, perhaps of its own, where it's able to make decisions without input from humans, perhaps the glimmerings of a kind of consciousness or self-awareness. It's hard to know. Can such a thing happen in computer circuitry? It happens in the chemistry and neurology of our brains. We're able to generate a kind of self-awareness and consciousness and volition.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, can self-aware consciousness exist in other media that are not biological? You've had people theorizing this for a long time. Ray Kurzweil, most notably,
Mm-hmm.
believes that the answer is yes. It might be yes. I mean, I actually think the answer is yes. I think there's other ways for consciousness to survive. Consciousness can exist perhaps in the form of energy. People who are spiritually inclined might just think that. I have come to thinking that. So maybe circuitry as well. And if, you're talking about logic, you're talking about a system of order of information. That's really what consciousness in a way might be considered. And on that basis, we're waiting for AI to reach a point of some version of self-awareness. If it will ever reach that, it's a big argument.
It is a big argument. It is.
Let me just add one thing. I'm so
Yeah.
sorry for talking over you, but if it may not really matter if AI gets to that point or not, from the point of view of us little people, because some consciousness is going to be dominating that AI, whether it's AI itself or a human oligarchic elite that is controlling the governments and controls the AIs. One way or the other, we're looking at massive levels of control.
Agreed. We're seeing it now. Well, look, I want to just piggyback on something that you said in terms of, could there be this whole idea of these AI or strong AI becoming conscious or has a measure of consciousness already? I want to bring up a term that I've used on the show before, having to do with panpsychism. Richard. Don't know
Hmm.
if you've heard the term, but it's a
Not sure.
relatively new term, and it's been defined as panpsychism is looking at the idea that all things, including and especially inanimate objects, have a measure of individuated consciousness. This is
Yeah.
something that certain areas of academia are looking at right now with a measure of seriousness. So, interestingly, if that's the case and it's determined by their own measurement that there is such a thing, it would stand to reason that AI can indeed become conscious
Yep. That makes perfect sense.
or
That's an
is.
idea. I didn't know that phrase, but yeah, I mean, since I was even 20, I've really wondered about things like this.
Yeah,
And is it possible? And I would never rule that type of a thing out.
right.
Forms of consciousness. Yeah. Yeah. I think the AI, but in terms of strong AI, I think we're looking, it's already getting to the point where it's becoming better at doing a lot of different human jobs than
Mhm.
human beings have been doing. And obviously it's going to continue. I mean, GPT 5.0 is going to come out at some point, 6.0, and what these capabilities are just blows my mind. So it is exciting. On one level, it's like, wow, what can we do now? I mean, I'm looking at
Mm.
the new art that you can create with Dali or
Yes.
Mid Journey, and I mean, they're beautiful. Of course, if I were an artist trying to make my living this way, I'd be in terror, and I'm sure many of them are. Writers, same thing. You know, these things are able to write passingly well. I would say not at expert levels. I have not seen GPT surpass me in my UFO writing. Not yet. Not yet.
We're going to talk about
But
that. Yeah.
maybe in another year or two. What do I know? You never know.
You never know. And we're both writers, we're both authors. And I have to admit, I have used GPT most recently to not write on my behalf, but to give me a bit of an outline
Yeah.
to prompt. I'm going to use the term
Yeah.
prompt. As we give it prompts, it's giving me prompts to spawn the creativity. See, here's probably the biggest part of the ethics for me. And that is looking at down the road, this long game of could it be that this is in part meant to extract imagination, extract creativity from us and become a surrogate for our being human? This gets us into the whole idea of being transhuman.
Yeah. I think you're onto something here. So I have a thought on this as well. I've been for the last year or so, I've been telling folks on my website this little phrase which is that we serve the system. The system doesn't serve us. We get some benefits from the system. So what's the system? The system is whatever structure we are living within. So 100,000 years ago, the system was nature. And we had to serve. If you didn't abide by the laws of nature, you would die. So that means you better create a shelter. You better work together as a society. You got wild animals there. You got unknown people over there. We've got to stick together. There are rules that you must adhere to. The consequences of not following those rules usually mean you die. You serve the system. Within that system, you develop new ways of getting by. You develop the use of fire. Hey, there's a good one.
Hmm.
And so on and so on. And then that changes your system. Now we have an artificial system. We live in houses. We live in an artificial infrastructure, which is very complex. And that system also has its own requirements that must be served. It has its own logic. It has its own inexorable needs. And in a sense, it doesn't matter if human beings fulfill those needs or if something else fulfills those needs. The system is like a Frankenstein monster. It develops in a sense its own will. I know this sounds a little out there, but just I'm asking people to stay with me here. It has a logic of its own that we survive on. We're almost like parasites on our system. So we need the system to maintain itself. That means oil extraction. That means, energy usage and transportation and shipping and all of this. Like we need it, or we die.
Right.
Basically, we don't know how to live without it. But the fact is, the system doesn't necessarily need us. Increasingly, that's the thing. Algorithms can do a lot of the jobs of maintaining the system. So, what's the situation going to be like when you have billions of people who need the system, but the system doesn't really necessarily need them.
Right.
That's kind of where we're moving to. It's a weird thing to be in.
That's a good question. How much does the system need us, or whomever is behind the system pulling the strings? And that could lead us down a whole other rabbit hole, Richard, in terms of what we offer almost as biological entities that some say are becoming synthetic, including the energy that we emit as electrical beings. So we indeed are an energy source that can be used by the system or those that are pulling
Okay.
the strings behind.
Now we just turned into Morpheus here, but yes, totally. Remember
Well,
that?
yeah,
Right? Remember that scene in The Matrix?
of course
Of
I
course.
do.
Obviously, yeah.
I think maybe I
That's
can get
us.
a little in post-production, get a little screenshot or something. Yes, that's indeed what I'm implying. So, and who knows the answer to that question, but I've always felt that we offer a resource, not one that is of um, the things that we would think they are about, but rather the energy that we're emitting, the things that we're able to do. Human, what do they call HR departments? Human resources. So that's an issue. I want to bring up, because
Mhm.
a few things to cover, and I want to eventually, guys, we are going to get into the alien quote unquote agenda, and if there may be some sort of commingling going on with AI and extraterrestrial. But before I do, here's what I've just learned a few days ago in terms of expediting this whole AI or synthetic life process. Did you know that Whole Foods has recently rolled out to about 500 stores nationwide hand scanners? You can now pay for your food or whatever you're getting there with a hand scan.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Scary.
It's almost, you could see these things as inevitabilities because, again, we serve the system. What does that mean? The system demands efficiency. The system,
Mhm.
for us to compete within the system, each player playing in that system is obligated to maximize their efficiency. And the fact is, from that perspective, hand scanning is definitely an efficiency. People might be thinking, oh, I don't have to dig out my wallet and my change. I just put my finger on there, my hand. And so there's a logic there. I think that's easy to see. But it also is a kind of, I mean, if we had, been really thinking about this 5 years ago, we probably would have been able to foresee this as inexorable. And I think there'll be more of that to follow.
What's
I think
happening?
I don't think there's a way for us to stop this. You're talking digital money. You got people talking about, well, we need to legislate, ways of ensuring privacy with that. Well, we'll see. But the digital currency, like it will happen ultimately because it will be seen as efficient. Just like this hand scanning thing at Whole Foods is efficient.
It's always under the guise of efficiency and convenience.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or entertainment. One of the three for us humans to buy in.
Yeah.
And all three are, and people are buying it, not questioning it. I had a friend that went into Whole Foods. That's how I found out about it. And then I looked it up, did a little bit of research on it. But she went into a local Whole Foods in Massachusetts. And the woman said, would you like to sign up for the palm scanning checkout? And she just kind of looked at her perplexed, like, what?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Now,
Well,
what?
you think 10 years from now, will you and I, if we go into Whole Foods, are we going to do the hand scan? We say no now, and maybe we never will. But you know what? 20 years from now, probably everyone will be doing it.
Less. Oh,
Yeah,
Richard, much less than 20
I was
years.
trying to be generous there, but yes,
Oh,
it'll
yeah.
happen.
And the thing is, there will be people that think it's great.
Or
This is
normal,
normal.
the norm.
Well, look at the pace. Look at the pace by which all of this has taken place in the last 3-4 years, let's say. The pace of AI and our participation with it. Before we were just hearing about it, or it was sort of in
Yeah,
the back room somewhere, and yeah, it was still playing a role, but now we are being enticed. I am being enticed. You talk about generative art. Amazing. I had somebody show me some images that she was looking at for a book of hers, kind of a coffee table book. I just I didn't have any words. I had no words. What do you say to that?
yeah. It's extraordinary. The artwork is one of the most visual. It's something that you can't avoid seeing and appreciating the amazing quality of the art. And
And the
It is. It's a
speed,
runaway train. This is a
yeah,
runaway train.
and the speed by which I think one of the things that's most stunning to me is, you give, as an example, a prompt you want to have, oh, you could come up with any combination of things, a cat wearing a top hat, eating a mouse in a dungeon. I mean, the most bizarre things.
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
In nanoseconds, there it is.
Well, can I throw another idea out here for you and our listeners? I've come to feel where we are at now might very well have been an inevitability, even going back, say, more than 50,000 years. Once we develop complex language, I think it was game over, is what I now think. I think, our path as a species is a long one. And at some point we developed the use of fire, which was a big one. And that was something that gave us a real edge as a species to survive against all the other difficulties that were out there. And you could say it was an unnatural or an artificial thing that we did. We developing all kinds of wooden and stone tools, ditto, to the point where we couldn't really live without them. So in other words, we learned early on that we could manipulate the world for our benefit. And once we developed language, the ability to share information in a sophisticated way with each other, I think that was the final piece that was necessary, because that takes you going from one brain now to two brains. We can share information with each other, to 10 brains, to 100, where you have this collective intelligence. That's kind of breaking the system. It's like if you're in a game and you just broke the game. And that's kind of what human beings did more than 50,000 years ago. And then when we developed written language just 6,000 years ago, that took it to another level. Like, all of these new levels have just been waiting for us to discover. Once we got the fundamental key, which is the logic of information itself. Once we learned how to use information and to transmit information and to organize information, that's actually our superpower. And now AI is simply taking oral language, written language, and now other forms of language to the next level. And where it's going to go after that. So in other words, we're serving the logic of information. Maybe that's the system we're serving. Next level will be maybe quantum computers employing AI without any need of human intervention whatsoever, and without any ability of human beings even to understand it.
I think that's being talked about right now. Isn't Google using quantum computing as a mainstay for their processing?
I don't know. I actually don't know that. I don't know where we're at with quantum computing. I mean, I know there's lots of people working on it. We probably have many advances that I'm not aware of with it. But it's full on quantum computing. I don't think anyone doubts that we're going to be seeing it.
Absolutely. Let's talk a little bit about, as we segue into what what alien life may, and I stress may, have to do with all of this. I want to talk about your conversation. Imagine that, a conversation with AI, with GPT-4.
Yes.
Man, that was an amazing discourse that you had on your show. By the way, we will link, for sure, we'll link that episode a few months ago that you had, as to your assessment about the responses that GPT-4 came up with as you inquired about the alien presence, and how it seemed to be this overarching flavor of establishment narrative that was co-opting what could have been a very deep conversation. Talk about that a little bit.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a funny thing. When you and I had our conversation 6 years ago, and even before that, I've been thinking about the future singularity, what it would be like. And the thing that's different now than what I was thinking about was, in the old days, I just thought that once we got to a certain level of artificial intelligence, it would be game over for all kinds of shenanigans and secrecy and lies, including the UFO cover-up. And at least I was hypothesizing this because I thought, well, because that intelligence is going to be pretty darn smart.
Mhm.
And all you'll need to do is ask it a few questions, and it'll give you the honest answer. And there won't be any secrecy. Well, okay, so that was a very naive thought of mine.
You said
So
it, not me.
what we have seen, of course, is state control and corporate control over the language, and we see that in every aspect of our society, and we see it in the AI. So when I had the conversation with GPT, I can't remember if it was 3.5 or 4. It was early on in all of this, and I was just curious, like, all right, so how well will it? I mean, I'm sure a lot of people have done this since then, but at the time, I was just asking, where will this go if I ask it a series of questions about aliens and UFOs and the like? And as you say, I noticed, I mean, it was very establishment oriented. You saw the guardrails already firmly in place. And so the thing I couldn't really get it to do easily without a lot of handholding was to delve into the realm of UFO conspiracies and cover up things like this. What I learned is that you can get it to talk about that. You have to kind of trick it.
You
At
said
least
that.
I had to. And I would have to say, all right, let's hypothesize. Let's just pretend. If
Smart.
we can play some pretend here, and that maybe the U.S. government, might be covering up UFOs, then and it would then maybe explore it. But I noticed there was a lot of resistance. So it was a moment where it really became obvious that yes, even the this new AI that everyone's talking about is very much part of a control system as well. It's being
No
brought into the
question.
control system.
Mhm, mhm.
And I just want to say, look, I'm not here to trash talk anyone specifically, but Sam Altman, who is the owner of OpenAI, he was at the last Bilderberg meeting. So what does that tell us? Like,
Any
you've got
surprise?
all of these folks, they've all been brought in. It's like the analogy I often think of is the Godfather movie, the 5 families of New York that run New York. Well, that's our world. You've got basically the nations are akin to mafia families. They've got their turf, they got their area, they control. And I think the AI is being brought into their control.
No question about it. I mean, look, if we're going to take this conversation all the way to the intimation that this could be leading to a transhumanist future, ergo, no more human, or human, maybe that's human 2.0. If you thread all of these little pieces together, the statement you just made would be obvious, that they're behind the whole thing.
Mm-hmm. Many people writing to me make this very clear that this is what they believe, and I've been wondering about it. So if we're segueing into the whole ET question, I mean, this might be a good place to do it. First of all, one thing that has struck me for a long time is the confluence, or the coming together, you could say, of these two big things. That is the ET presence, and maybe we can call it the disclosure movement on one hand, and then the development of the singularity or strong AI on the other. And around the time that we had our conversation that you played earlier, I was thinking, is it a coincidence that we're looking at these two huge developments all at once? I mean, there's other developments too, but these are two big ones. And what's the attitude of these other beings when they're seeing our transformation? Do they have an opinion on this? And I think none of this is an accident. I think that you have people saying, well, they've always been here, whoever they are. It's often kind of a lazy statement. It's like, well, who are they? Is it the gray aliens have always been here?
Exactly.
Someone else? All right, but let's just assume that there's been a long-standing observation. I personally think that's the case too. But I would say this: when I look at the evidence, it strikes me as a much lower level than what we're seeing today, a much more hands-off form of interaction, which makes sense because, frankly, centuries ago, thousands of years ago, what could human beings really do in relation to these other beings? Not a whole lot. We're not in that same position anymore. We have got a very powerful civilization. We've got powerful weapons. We've got the ability to go into space ourselves. We're developing powerful AI and quantum computing and I mean, it's off the charts. Like all of it's in the snap of a finger. So I think that's what's brought in the galactic neighborhood. I think we have a lot of intelligences watching, and maybe more than watching, maybe interacting. it strikes me that would be a very strong reason why they would be here. Now the question is, do they have an opinion on our transformation, going from basically, a world of horses pulling wooden carts now to all of this? They probably are thinking, well, it's an inevitability, but they might be thinking, are these humans going to be a hassle? Are they going to be dangerous? I mean, we like to throw our weight around. We like to be very assertive and we're good at weapons. We're good at collective organized violence. We're good at all of that. We're very territorial. Maybe they are too. Maybe these other aliens are as well. I would be surprised if they weren't territorial.
Yeah. Well, you said something really important. Who are the they? And I've always said that they are probably a vast spectrum beyond what we're even, the best researchers even realize. Let's bring up a book by now the late Nigel Kerner. He wrote the book Gray Aliens and Artificial Intelligence, The Battle Between Natural and Synthetic Beings for the Human Soul. I just learned about this book just in prepping for our interview, Richard, and learned that he had written several books, but this book came out in 2020.
Yeah.
Not that there's any connection here, but he passed shortly after the book came out. Highly controversial, but his hypothesis is pretty clear that the gray aliens are indeed not just interested in all of this proliferation of AI here, but definitely from his point of view, have a hand in developing it in order to co-opt the human species. This is a huge subject that I don't want to speak out of school. I obviously have touched on it, but this has to do with DNA. He believed that our very consciousness and DNA have been hacked by these entities, and an artificial construct has been superimposed over our core thinking processes. That's a quote. Can you speak to that? Let's spend a little time on this.
I have not read this book. I have a different book by Nigel Kerner, which is called Gray Aliens and the Harvesting of Souls, which I haven't read it recently. I'm looking. I think I've got it on my shelf over to my left there, and I might even have it. No, I had it closer to me a little while ago. So I'm familiar with him, and I think it's a shame that, I assume you never spoke with him. I never spoke with him either. It'd be too bad. I don't know what to say about this latest concept of his, but maybe speaking to the general point, there's a lot to be said about potential co-optation of the human species by extraterrestrials in general. First of all, let's just say there's a group that has come here, of many groups, but let's say one group has come here and they look at us and they think they live on a great planet. They've got all this water and these resources. It's actually like a paradise. And look how they're trashing it. So that's one problem. And then also they're pretty violent and they got a pretty low level of consciousness when you really get down to it. We could do a better job at running this world than them. What if they decide that? And then they think, well, how would we go about to do it? Can we take some of their bodies and infiltrate them? I'm laughing as I say it, but is it possible? Is it possible that we can create our own avatars based on their biologics? Can we clone them? And if they have, do they have spiritual technology? We think of spiritual as ethics, as in terms of our. We tend to impose ethics into our spirituality, I should say. That's mainly, I'm thinking, because of a Judeo-Christian heritage where we do that. But what if they just look at spirituality in a very mechanical, pragmatic way? So, in other words, they are aware that there's a soul to each person, and are there ways of placing souls in different bodies? Do they have that technology? I've spoken to people who are absolutely convinced this is the case. Can't prove it. I can't prove that. And I don't even know if it's true. But this is a little bit kind of getting toward where Kerner was going, perhaps, in this idea of you've got these entities that might think they know better than we do how to run our world. Maybe they do in certain levels. And they are like, all right, well, we can't have a war with them because that's just going to wreck everything. But we'll just go in and do a little kind of a takeover from the inside. And then you could argue, and I'm just throwing this out as a hypothesis, I'm not even necessarily, but if they've got their influence into various parts of the current human infrastructure, you could say that they are guiding the human species into this revolutionary transformation of AI, of global technocratic governance and surveillance, which is we're moving into, technocracy. They may think this is much better because we really need to control the human species in a much more efficient way than have them exist as 200 different nations where they're going to war and they're doing this and that and all of these other dangerous things that we don't like. So we're just going to put them under one rule. We're going to control them from some central authority, and we'll have the humans do it themselves, but we're going to control them. Like maybe that could be. And so on that basis, where Kerner might be coming from, it's too bad he's not alive to be discussing this. AI and what he's discussing is every bit as hypothetical as what I've just been discussing.
That was a good hypothesis, though.
What? Yeah, I mean, it's is it possible, and it would kind of fit along with where he's coming from.
He's not the only one that's had this conversation or had this theory, I should say. Quite a few people have approached this idea from one form or another, particularly insofar as the abduction or how ubiquitous the abduction phenomenon once was, still is. That's another thing. People are like, is it still happening? To what extent?
Yeah.
And the ultimate question of why the hybridization program, DNA extraction, and ultimately churning out cyborgs, essentially. It's loaded implications. And will we ever know? That's the other thing. Will we ever know, Richard Dolan?
I don't know. I mean, we're a very ignorant world.
Yes.
People. There's always a few people who kind of take the energy to kind of study these things. Most of us, most people just don't have the time. They don't have the inclination, and it's hard. It's very hard to kind of research these matters. I look at myself. I've had a lot of advantages. I had a very good education. I did well in my academic life. And I've been able to dedicate myself for almost half of a century to
Congrats.
Madison. Thanks. But here's the thing.
Condolences.
it's very difficult. Even with all of the advantages that I know that I have had in my life, it's been very difficult to kind of crack this nut and to understand all the layers of deception that exists in our reality. And so if I feel like if it's difficult for me, how are people really going to? I've got family, I've got relatives, I've got all kinds of friends, and I see what their lives are like. It's very difficult. They're never going to get it.
Right.
So to understand where we are at vis-a-vis this other awesome, technologically speaking, awesome civilization that probably operating at high levels of intelligence, maybe orders of magnitude beyond this. I don't know how easy it's going to be for us to understand or to get to the truth. But let me just say this. I don't want to be despairing totally. We human beings do have the ability to reason things out. We do have the ability to do investigation. We do have the ability to think for ourselves and to figure a lot of things out and to make inferences. That's what you've been doing. That's what I've been doing. And it is absolutely possible to make progress there. I feel that those of us who work at it do make progress in understanding. There's, in terms of alien agendas, I wrote a book by that title a couple of years ago, trying to figure out what are the various agendas of the different groups that we might call alien. Some I think are not harmful to us. I think some are actually. I think there's reason to think that there are benign groups out there. But I also think that there are reasons to consider the fact that there's a group or maybe multiple groups that I don't know if they're hostile per se, but they've got their own agenda, their own
question,
which made their own interests, which may not align with ours. Totally possible. Why are they seen? You talked about abductions. It's a good question. But just in terms of activity, I mean, one of the things that blows my mind is looking at the scale of outstanding UFO sightings that take place around the world every week.
Every week. Well, I've
Okay.
heard as much as one is reported. What is it? Every 8 minutes?
Yeah, that could be because you go to you've got MUFON, you got the National UFO Reporting Center. Combined, they're well over 10,000 reports every year.
Absolutely.
More
Yeah.
like 15.
Yeah.
And that's just those groups within North America predominantly.
Absolutely. That's true. Yeah. Well, I don't know if you know, Richard, but I've been on a little show called The Proof is Out There on the History Channel. We're now in season 4.
Well done.
Yeah, we're killing it, I guess. But
Fantastic.
we're talking about, you know what, the whole range and spectrum of UFO sightings, where they're coming from, putting it in lots of different kinds of context. It just, and it never gets old, and
Yeah.
it's getting more bizarre as the
Mhm.
seasons go by. So with that said, I want to end our conversation here. Of course, guys, we're going next door. You know where we're going. We're going over to Patreon for a few more minutes to round out this conversation. But I want to commend you, Mr. Dolan, not only for all the great work you're doing, but in this last conversation with, not last conversation, but the last one I saw with GPT-4 and your interface with it. As you rounded out that conversation, you said to your audience something so profound, and that is, look, regardless of where this may go and where they may want to take us, we always have agency over, and I'm paraphrasing, our spiritual self. Find a place of inner sanctitude and calm, and let that be your guiding force, regardless of what's, this doesn't have to be like a riptide taking you out. Although the best thing to do is go with it, but stay in the center, the eye of the storm, so to speak. Again, paraphrasing, but
Thanks for
such an
quoting that.
important thing to say.
I forgot that I said that, but that's very, very core to where I'm at these days in my own life. And
Yeah.
I will say, you spend years studying the difficulties of our world and the seemingly intractable problems. Conversely, it's a really crazy thing to say, but I have found my own spirituality over the last, I'll say, 5 years or so, that has become very important in my life. And I don't know what I would do without it. So yes, understanding that for me, part of it is belief, part of it's faith, call it what you will, but a concept that we do have a spiritual world, a spiritual life, a soul that's important, and that we should respect and guard and care for. That's, to me, very, very important. I wouldn't do anything without it.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Maybe of utmost importance. No, not maybe. Definitely of utmost importance right now.
Yeah.
Some believe we are in a spiritual battle. However you want to deem it, it's a powerful time. I've used quite a few different adjectives, but let's just call it powerful.
Yeah.
Paradigm shifting et al. Listen, before we not hang up, you and I aren't going to hang up. We're going next door. Before we sign off here, I just want to give a shout out to the folks at Disclosure Fest. They are about to put on the conference of a lifetime that both Richard and I will be speaking at, called Stairway to the Stars in Las Vegas. It'll be November 10th, 11th, and 12th. Lots going on there. Richard, you're going to be delivering a keynote, as will I. What is yours going to be about?
Calling it, I think the title is UAP in the Age of Revolution. And I'm putting the final touches on it, so I don't want to say too much. But basically, look, we're in a world that is going turned inside out, upside down in every way possible. We've discussed some of those issues just here. And getting a sense of, honestly, some of these themes that you wanted to talk about, ET, where the alien intelligence might be with all of this. These are issues that I want to be addressing as well. My wife, Tracy's going to be there as well. She's one of the speakers. She's got something really great to discuss. And in fact, there's a lot of other, it's a huge lineup.
It is a huge lineup. We'll be amongst friends. Yes, it'll be great.
The Big Pyramid in Vegas.
Big Pyramid in Vegas. So I think you can still sign up now. Obviously, we're only a few days out by the time this airs. So if you're in the area, particularly, that may seem more feasible for you. Or I believe there's going to be they're going to be live streaming it, I believe. So
okay.
Yeah.
I don't think I quite realized that.
I didn't either until just recently. So we'll make sure to have a link for that as well. Listen, I know Richard's got a full day. I do as well. So we're going to sign off on the main channel. Don't hang up, Richard. We're going next door. Spend a few more minutes. But in the meantime, you guys keep the spirit alive. First and foremost, that's the main thing. And we'll be we will make it through. Not just make it through. We'll be better than ever. I'm sure of that. God bless you all. Thank you, Richard. We will talk to you very soon.
It was a
Thanks,
pleasure,
everyone.
Alexa.
Take care.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to watch what's next, plus more to explore. And don't forget to subscribe to Higher Journeys.